Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nithai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nithai Gaura Haribo. Jaya Radha Govinda Radha Govinda Radhe. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Grantara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki. So we are reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 6, text 36. Tatapi kirtayami anga. Tatapi kirtayami anga. Yata mati yata shrutam. Yata mati yata shrutam. Kirtim hare svam satkartum. Kirtim hare svat satkartum. Giram anyabidasatim. Giram anyabidasatim. Tatapi kartayamyanga. Yata mati yata shrutam. Kirtim hare svam satkartum. Giram anyabidasatim. Tatapi kirtayamyanga. Yata mati yata shrutam. Kirtim hare svat satkartum. Tatapi kirtayamyanga. Yata mati yata shrutam. Kirtim hare svat satkartum. Giram anyabidasatim. Tatapi kirtayamyanga. Yata mati yata shrutam. Tatapi kirtayamyanga. Yata mati yata shrutam. Kirtim hare sva satkartum. giram anya vidasatim. Tatapi kirtayam yanga yata mati yata shrutam kirtim haresa satkartum giram anya vidasatim. Drikeshri. Tatapi kirtayam yanga yata mati yata shrutam kirtim haresa satkartum giram anya vidasatim. So I don't know if we will remember the whole verse, but at least we can remember the second line. It's easy. Yata mati yata shrutam. Tata, therefore, api, although it is so, kirtayami, I do describe, anga, o vidura, yata, as much as, mati, intelligence, yata, as much as, shrutam, heard, kirtim, glories, hare, of the Lord, svam, own, satkartum, just purify, giram, speeches, anyabida, otherwise, asatim, unchaste. Sati is chaste. Asatim, unchaste. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Śrīla Prabhupada Ki Jai. In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from my spiritual master and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech. For otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste. Purport. The purification of the conditioned soul necessitates purification of his consciousness. By the presence of consciousness, the presence of the transcendental soul is verified. And as soon as consciousness leaves the body, the material body is not active. Consciousness is perceived, therefore, by activities. The theory put forward by empiric philosophers that consciousness can remain in an inactive state is the proof of their poor fund of knowledge. One should not become unchaste by stopping the activities of pure consciousness. If the activities of pure consciousness are stopped, certainly the conscious living force will be otherwise engaged. Before, unless engaged, the consciousness has no standing. Consciousness cannot be silent even for a moment. When the body does not act, the consciousness acts in the form of dreams. Unconsciousness is artificial. By induced extraneous help, it remains for a limited period, but when the intoxication of a drug is finished, or when one is awake, the consciousness again acts earnestly. Maitreya's statement is that in order to avoid unchaste conscious activities, he was trying to describe the unlimited glories of the Lord, although he did not have the ability to describe them perfectly. This glorification of the Lord is not a product of research, but the result of hearing submissively from the authority of the spiritual master. It is also not possible to repeat all that one has heard from his spiritual master, but one can narrate as far as possible by one's honest endeavor. It does not matter whether the Lord's glories are fully explained or not. One must attempt to engage one's body, mental and verbal activities in the transcendental glorification of the Lord. Otherwise, such activities will remain unchaste and impure. The existence of the conditioned soul can be purified only by the method of engaging mind and speech in the service of the Lord. The Tridandi sannyasi of the Vaishnava school accepts 3 rods representing the vow to engage in the service of the Lord with body, mind and speech, whereas the Ekadandi sannyasi takes the vow to become one with the Supreme. Since the Lord is the Absolute, there is no distinction between Him and His glories. The glories of the Lord, as chanted by the Vaishnava sannyasi, are as substantial as the Lord Himself. And thus, while glorifying the Lord, the devotee becomes one with Him in transcendental interest, although he remains eternally a transcendental servitor. This simultaneously one and different position of the devotee makes him eternally purified, and thus his life becomes a complete success. One more time the verse. In spite of my inability, whatever I have been able to hear from my spiritual master and whatever I could assimilate, I am now describing in glorification of the Lord by pure speech, for otherwise my power of speaking would remain unchaste. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanepyo Vaishnavepyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here Maitreya is saying that he's speaking for his own personal purification. When we are practicing Krishna consciousness, we have these 2 aspects. We are trying to do it for ourselves, to purify ourselves, and as well, if possible, to help others, because they also need purification. And Srila Prabhupada makes the point in the beginning of his purport that in order the conditioned soul to purify itself needs an elevation of the consciousness, because basically this is what is impure at the moment. Like if we see our body, if we analyze it, the body is always impure. And even when you try to purify it so that it's pure to do certain ceremonies or religious rituals, very fast after that the body becomes again impure, because all the time some impure substances are coming out of it. When you are sick, your nose is running, or so many other things. So the body itself is impure, but the soul by nature is pure. But the consciousness can become disrupted, can become contaminated, can become covered. So actually the way the soul to become again situated in its original position is by purifying the consciousness. And mainly the consciousness is covered by 2 things: the desire to control material nature and the desire to enjoy material nature. So if we manage to get rid of these 2 improper ways of thinking, then we are back to our original consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada is saying that the nature of the soul is to act. Consciousness is always active. We cannot stop act. Srila Prabhupada is saying even if we are externally inactive, still while sleeping we will dream, generally, and this is the proof that the consciousness is again active. The consciousness will act anyway. The question is if the activities will be pure or impure. And when our activities are connected with Krishna, when our thinking, feeling and willing and our speech and our gross activities of the body are connected with Krishna, this is pure existence. And when they are not, this is what we call Maya or illusion. Why illusion? Because we are acting, but we are acting with the wrong idea that we are going to enjoy the fruits of our activities. We are going to benefit ourselves. So basically we cannot stop acting, and if we try to act in a wrong way, the result will be unsatisfactory for the soul. The only option the soul to be completely satisfied and happy is to act in a proper way, in connection with Krishna. And Maitreya is saying that in order to purify himself, and in order, he's using very interesting word, to stay chaste. It's a very interesting word. I want to stay chaste in my relationship with Krishna. So in order to stay chaste, he wants to use everything that he has totally for the satisfaction of Krishna. And this idea about being chaste, it can be, we can see it in a different connection, in a different kinds of relationships. Like generally when we hear the word chaste, what is the first thing that comes to our mind? Chaste women. Because we connect that, okay, the woman, she's completely surrendered to the husband, and this make her chaste, completely dedicated, completely selfless. But also we should be chaste in our connection with the spiritual master. Yes, it's the same kind of relationship. The disciple should be always very honest, very chaste and very dedicated in his service to the spiritual master. And in the same way, the soul should be always totally chaste to Krishna. So that means the soul should be completely dedicated in the service of Krishna. And here especially, Maitreya, he wants to use totally his speech, vak, in service of the Lord. He doesn't want to speak about anything else than topics related with Krishna. That's why he's saying, I want to use totally my mind, my speech in the service of Krishna. And he's using two very important words, as I said a little before that. What is that? Yata mati, yata shrutam. The second line of the verse. Yata mati means according to my intelligence, according to what I can understand. And yata shrutam, it's very important because basically shows that I want to speak what I already heard. From who? From my spiritual master or from authority. And this shows that in order someone to properly use his speech, he has to speak something which is coming from authority, something which is bona fide. We cannot just speak whatever comes to our mind and present it as the absolute truth, absolute reality. It may be so, but it may not be so. So better stick to what we heard from authority, from absolute sources. Yata shrutam, what we heard from the spiritual master, what we read from the bona fide books like Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Bhagavad Gita, or the purports of the acharyas. And yatamati means we should try to understand what we are hearing and what we are reading and try to explain it so that it's even easier for people to understand. If we cannot understand, at least we can repeat the things as they are, the way how we heard them. But if we can understand, or realize the knowledge to the extent that we realize it, we can very easily explain to the people. And for them it will be very easy to understand. Why? Because we understand what we are talking. I remember one time there was interesting story. We were in my country, in Bulgaria. We just, shortly before that we got our temple. And still the courtyard of the temple was in not so good condition. So we had to basically bring some extra earth and just make it nice, the whole place. So a few people came to help, and like 2-3 of them, they were not devotees. And there was certain situation, I will not go into details, but at one point, one of the people who were kind of new, he made a comment, and it was not like up to the standard, as we can say. At one of the senior devotees, he kind of became angry on this, and he immediately, like a little bit like, scold him. He said, what you're saying is not right, it's not bona fide, you're speculating. And this devotee, he said, but you also don't know. Do you have realization about what you're saying now? And this devotee, after that, he shared with me, he said, yes, like I was right to say it, because that was my duty to correct him, because he said something which is not correct. But he said that I got this conclusion for myself, that yes, we have to be careful what we are speaking, and especially if we are speaking something that we don't really have realizations on the topic, better speak very in a very humble manner and very gently. So that was something that I remember. So if we are sharing what is bona fide, and if we are sharing according to our realization, the result will be very good. And it doesn't matter if we will be able to describe the absolute reality, Krishna, completely or not. Actually, we cannot describe Krishna completely, because Krishna is unlimited, and our mind and our energy, our capacity is very much limited. So the only way to describe Krishna is just to try to repeat authoritative descriptions of Krishna. This is enough. Ananta Shesh from unlimited times is trying to describe the glory of Krishna, and he cannot do it. What to speak of us? Just one tiny living entity. So the real success is not in how much we are describing Krishna, in terms of we cannot describe him completely, but our success is to try to use 100% everything that we have, our mental ability, our speech. If we are a very learned person, if we are very educated, try to use the best language that we can, and try to use our body completely in service of Krishna. The more we are able to do this, the more our life is successful. And this brings the connection with the with the spiritual master, because how we know how to describe Krishna, how do we know how to serve properly Krishna, what activities to perform, all this we are learning from Guru, Yata Shrutim, Yata Shrutam. Guru, he is someone who is completely surrendered to Krishna. He doesn't have idea to have separate sense gratification apart from gratifying the sense of Krishna. And from his example, we are learning how we can also do that. I heard recently a lecture of Kadambakana Maharaj, and he was giving interesting example. He was saying that In this pastime of Lord Chaitanya in Puri Ratha Yatra, at some point the devotees, they make few circles around Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to keep him aloof from the big crowds around. We know that on this Ratha Yatra in Jagannath Puri sometimes like 1 million people are going. So it's a big crowd. So there were 3 circles around Lord Chaitanya. The first circle, the closer to Lord Chaitanya, was from his closest associates like Lord Nityananda, Kashishvara, few other devotees. Then around that, the second circle was from the Bengali devotees that came especially to see Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, stay with him for 3-4 months during the rainy season. And then the third circle, that was Maharaj Prataparudra and his associates, his servants. So Kadamba Maharaj was sharing that this reminds him very much how he could see that in our Krishna conscious society also we have different circles of devotees around Srila Prabhupada, because he's like the spiritual master for us in ISKCON. And we have the third circles. The third circle, this is like the devotees who are, they have some interest in Krishna consciousness. They have, to some extent, they are serious about Krishna consciousness, but not always. Sometimes you can see them very serious. Sometimes you can see them coming regularly in the temples for different festivals, but sometimes they just disappeared and they come back again after a few months or 1 year or so. And then the second circle, these are the devotees who are very serious, like we could say like the serious sadhakas. They are very serious about their spiritual life, very serious about chanting their 16 rounds, reading regularly the books. They are going regularly to the temple, they are doing seva for the temple. But still they have also their personal life. They have something else, but they are very serious. And then Maharaj was saying the first circle, which is closest to Prabhupada, these are the devotees, they are very serious sadhakas, but they also have this idea that what Prabhupada wants, and let my life be completely dedicated to the desire of Prabhupada. And Maharaj was saying that we can see so many examples of the personal disciples of Srila Prabhupada that completely dedicated his life for his service, just to see what's his desire and try to accomplish this. And Maharaj was giving 2 very interesting examples. One was with Brahmananda, his Grace Brahmananda Prabhu, who just when heard that Srila Prabhupada has desired some preaching to start in Pakistan, he immediately left and he went there. And it was very, very difficult for him. People were not appreciating very much his dress, his ways to start to preach. He was trying to go to some universities, and he was not received very well. And sometimes he was just sitting in the park trying to chant to attract some attention. But sometimes people were coming to him and they were telling him, if you don't leave from here, we are going to kill you. So it was very difficult for him. He was very determined to try to make some preaching, to start the preaching there, but it was not at all easy. And he got to know some nice gentleman who was retired from the army, Pakistani guy. And one day he came to Brahmananda and he told him, you have to leave immediately. Brahmananda said, why? What's the problem? He said, they are already speaking that if you don't leave tomorrow, when you come to buy your subjects from the market, a guy will come and will snap you with a knife. So you have to leave, not tomorrow, today, immediately. And of course, Brahmananda already, he sent like a order to Brahmananda that he has to leave immediately, but he didn't got the letter. So anyway, when Brahmananda saw Prabhupada after like few days, Prabhupada was so happy that he's okay and everything is fine with him. At that time, actually, his brother, Gargamuni, he went to Bangladesh to try to start the preaching there. And just when he was there, when he arrived, he went to the local temple of Gaudiya Math. There is one, as far as I know, all the 63 mats of Gaudiya Math, they are in India, but there is one which is outside, and this is in Bangladesh. And he went there and he just stayed with the devotees. And the same night, because there was some clash at that time between, I guess, India and Bangladesh, the night that he just entered the temple and he was staying there, some tank came and he started shooting at the temple. And one small part of the temple was kind of ruined, and all the devotees immediately, like, they left the place. And he left and he understood, okay, now it's difficult to preach here. He got the first plane and he left the country. And Maharaj was mentioning other great devotee, Guru Das, who he was saying, when just Srila Prabhupada expressed the desire to have a temple in Vrindavan, that was still at the time when, like, the Hare Krishna movement was not really established. We didn't have like very good reputation, and we didn't have many like congregational members, and everywhere Indians who are appreciating the movement and the devotees. So to get financial help was very difficult. So then Gurudas Prabhu, he just said to Prabhupada, don't worry Prabhupada, I'll arrange the money for the temple. You just go on with the planning it. And he just left with his people to Japan and started collecting money, or maybe it was not Japan, I'm not sure. Okay. Well, Maharaj is saying Gurudas, I don't, he's not saying where, but definitely he also got quite money for Prabhupada, for building Vrindavan temple especially. So anyway, the idea is that if the disciple is so much surrendered to the Guru and try to see what is the desire of the Guru and try to satisfy the desire of the Guru, this is the success in his life. This is full surrender. And I was thinking, what is a good example for full surrender? Like we know the classical example is Bali Maharaj, because he surrendered everything that he had to Krishna. And we know how the story goes, that when Vamanadev said, yeah, I want only 3 steps. And Bali Maharaj said, 3 steps? Like, I'm Bali Maharaj, I own the whole universe. You can ask for everything that you want, I will give it to you. And Vamanadev make the point that no, one should not be greedy. He should take only as much as he needs. Otherwise, if he is greedy, no matter how much he'll have, again, he won't be happy. So he said, just give me 3 steps. And we know how the story goes. With 2 steps, he crossed the whole universe. And then he turned to Bali Maharaj and said, so you promised 3 steps. Where shall I put my 3rd step now? Where shall I put my foot? And then Bali Maharaj said, well, my dear Lord, still there is one thing that belongs to me. This is my head. So you can put your 3rd steps on my head. But then the wife of Bali Maharaj came very eager, and she said, what are you talking? how you can say that your head belongs to you? Nothing belongs to you. Even your body belongs to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So she actually, by the philosophy that she was speaking, we can understand she is also amazing devotee, great devotee. And she was very eager to serve Vamanadev, to take part in the Abhisheka. She was helping. So apparently it was looking that Bali Maharaj lost everything that he had. He lost his wealth, he lost his properties, he lost his position of a king. Because Vamanadev said, so you couldn't fulfill your promise, now I have to imprison you. And he asked that Bali Maharaj is tied with ropes, and Bali Maharaj was in this awkward position. He surrendered everything that he had to the Supreme Lord, and apparently he was in a very strange situation. But then Krishna arranged for him to have his own planet, separate planet, and the standard of sense gratification of this planet was even higher than the standard on Svarga, where Indra resides. So if someone surrenders his life in the service of Krishna and in the service of his Guru, he will never be a loser. Never. He will win. And he will definitely win spiritually. He will also win materially. Because Krishna is saying, Ananyas chintayantu mam ye jana pariupasate tesham nitya abhiyuktanam yoga shema vahamyaham. Whatever my devotee who is completely surrendered needs, I will arrange for him. I'll give him everything that he needs. Materially and spiritually both. We know this interesting story with this Acharya, Arjuna Acharya, that he was commenting on Bhagavad Gita, and when he came to this verse, he said, no, Krishna is not doing this personally, he is doing it through his energies. So he scratched aham, and he made a comment that actually that this is not aham, this means Krishna through his energies. So when he went to take his to perform his noon duties as a brahmana, to take his noon bath, and at that time in his home 2 boys came, and they were bringing lots of sabjis and rice and sugar, flour, and they knocked on the door, and the wife of this great devotee opened the door, and she saw these 2 boys bringing all this stuff. She said, what is this? Why are you bringing all this? And they said, we are bringing it out of fear from your husband. And she saw that they had some scratches on their bodies, and she said, like, what is this? Who was treating you in this way? And they said, yeah, your husband. That's why we are very afraid from him, and we are bringing all this stuff for him. And she took all the products and started preparing lunch with them. But she couldn't believe that her husband did this thing, like acted in such a way. And she was so much affected internally that she did something that she never did before in her dharmic duties toward her husband. She started eating before him. And when she came, because that was something very unusual, she said, like, what's going on? You never did this before. You always wait. When I come, you serve me, and then you are taking your meal. How it is that you are eating now? And she immediately looked at him like with this angry look. And she said, how can you be so rude? How can you treat just small kids like that? And he said, just wait a minute. What's going on here? Just can you explain a little bit? She said, yeah, these 2 small boys came here and they brought all this food and vegetables, and they said that you were treating them very roughly, and that's why they are very afraid from you. He said, like, I cannot understand what's going on here. And then he said, like how they were looking like. She said, yeah, two small boys. One was kind of blackish and the other was kind of whitish color. And he like said, wait a minute. And she said, and yeah, they had these scratches on their body. And he said, okay, now I understand. Now I understand. Immediately he went back to his room, opened his purports to Bhagavad Gita, and he corrected this thing. No, Krishna personally, he is taking care for his devotees. So if someone surrenders his life, his mind, his words, and his body in the service of his Guru and in the service of Krishna, nothing will lack in his life. There is this famous verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Shraddha Shabde Vishvasa Kahe Sudrida Nishchaya Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Kritahaya. This is a definition of faith. What means to have strong faith? Faith means that if I just perform my duties in Krishna consciousness, nothing will lack in my life. Everything that I need, all other duties that I have, everything will happen automatically. Krishna will take care of it. My Guru Maharaj will take care of it. They will help me. So this means Shraddha. And if we have this strong faith and if we act on it, our life will be completely successful. That's why Srila Prabhupada is saying this simultaneously one and different position of a devotee makes him eternally purified, and thus his life becomes complete success. That we don't have a separate interest from the interest of our Guru and Krishna. Of course, someone may say, hey, wait a minute, I cannot just like live my whole life in the temple or just sing Hare Krishna whole day or chant Hare Krishna whole day or just eat prasadam whole day. Maybe I can eat prasadam whole day, but the rest I cannot do. Yes, we may not be able to do that, but then let's make sure that whatever we are doing in our life, directly or indirectly, is always connected with the Krishna and with the desire of our Guru. Whatever is our position, grihe tako, vane tako, sada hari boli dako. Wherever we are, we should always chant Hare Krishna, we should always remember Krishna, we should always see that the way how we are living our life is satisfactory for our Guru. And if we can try to see what's the desires of our Guru and we can make something extra to give him extra happiness, extra pleasure, this will be success in our life. Thank you very much for your attention. Some questions or comments? Everything is clear. Correct, yes.
So the markings, what is that called? The Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam or something? I can never remember. Isn't that a certain name?
Yes, Krishna, he has different symbols on his body, and one of them is this Shrivatsa.
That is the name of it?
Yes, but what I meant here in this story is something different, because when he was writing his purport and he saw Krishna is saying, Vahami aham, I personally take care of my devotees, this Vaishnava, he was thinking, no, it's not personally. Krishna takes care of his devotees, but he's not doing personally, he's doing it through his energies. So that's why this word is not correct. So he wanted to comment that actually this is not proper. And he scratched the word. So this scratch, actually, when the wife of this Acharya saw Krishna and Balaram, they had these scratches on his body. Because this is what they wanted to show. he's crushed us. He's saying we don't take care of our devotees personally. It's not true. We do it personally.
Thank you. Thank
That
you.
was the idea. Some comments, Maharaj? Would you like to add something?
So the verse you were talking about is 9:22, and that story is quite famous about, Krishna and Balaram coming and personally delivering the boga so that his wife could cook it. The other thing that I was noticing was you were talking about Bali Maharaj and the planet he was given was Sutala Loka, which is one of the subterranean heavenly planets. So, because Bali Maharaj was very taken with Krishna, or in this case, Vamanadev, so he didn't know who this little boy was, but he was warned by his spiritual master, Sukracharya, that this was a trick, because the situation, the larger situation was that Bali Maharaj and the demons had conquered the heavenly planets, so they were in possession and control of the entire universe. And the demigods wanted to get the heavenly planets back because that's their rightful home. So they approached the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord said he would get the heavenly planets back as Vamanadev. So he took birth as a little dwarf, and although he was very attractive, he had dwarfish-like proportions. And when he came before Bali Maharaj, it was customary for a king to give some benediction to any saintly person, especially a young brahmachari. So he was offering something, but Sukracharya, the spiritual master of the demons, suggested that he should not, because he said this little boy is actually Vishnu and he will take everything. He will cheat you and take everything. However, Bali Maharaj reasoned that since we should offer everything to the Supreme Lord, if this is Vishnu, then all the better. That, I should offer everything to him. And Sukracharya said no, that when speaking, sometimes you can make excuses, or in certain circumstances one can refuse to follow through on a promise, when joking and other circumstances. So he was suggesting that Bali Maharaj withdraw his pledge to give Vamanadev whatever he wanted. But of course, Bali Maharaj didn't do that. And instead, exactly as Sukracharya said, Vamanadev took everything away from him. And not only that, but he humiliated him on top of it. Still, Bali Maharaj was not at all disturbed by that. And in his quandary of being apparently not only having all of his opulence taken away, but also humiliated on top of that, that's when his grandfather, Prahlad Maharaj, showed up, And so Prahlad also offered various obeisances. So here was a line in the so-called demons that were very, not actually demoniac at all, but actually great devotees. Both Prahlad and Bali Maharaj were great devotees. The child in between, though, was a demon. So Prahlad's son, I'm trying to remember what his name. Virochana, yeah, Virochana was in between, and so he was actually a demon. And as we know, when Bali Maharaj submitted himself, then Vamanadev released him and said, not only will you live an opulent life, you will become the next Indra in the next Manu. And he gave him the position in Sutala Loka, where little Vamanadev actually is the doorkeeper for Bali Maharaj. So we see that when you give everything to the Lord, you're never really the loser. It may look that way, and that's sometimes the way it works. It looks like everything is closed up, like we have been completely devastated. But actually, in the next moment, someone who tries to simply continue to serve the Lord in whatever circumstances, then the Supreme Lord provides from them in a nice way, and they're able to continue their service. So that's where Bali Maharaj is even today in Sutala Loka, awaiting the change of Manus when he'll take office as the next Indra, I believe it is. Any rate, that was,
Hare Krishna.
add
Nice.
that to the story.
Thank you, Maharaj. Yeah, I remember one also interesting fact from this pastime is that when Shukracharya went to Bali Maharaj and said, "This is Vishnu, he's going to take everything that you have. Don't promise anything." Bali Maharaj said, "I already promised. Now you want me to say no, I will not fulfill my promise. I'm a king, I'm a kshatriya." And then Shukracharya said, "Don't worry, there is a way to do it. There is one shastra, it is written, if you don't say Om before making a promise, this promise is invalid. So no problem. It's not a problem." Yes. Technically you didn't promise, so you can just not give him anything. Okay? And it is said actually that Shukracharya, he was worried that if he gives everything, what I am going to eat, because I'm the guru.
What's interesting is at the end of the story, Vamanadev comes to Shukracharya, and he actually asks him, you know, your disciple, Bali Maharaj, he gave everything. What wrong thing did he actually commit? And Shukracharya agrees. Yes, you are right, Vamanadev. You actually, it is true that one should, under any circumstances, give everything to the Supreme Lord. And my disciple acted rightly. So he, you know, at the end of the story, Shukracharya even concurs that Bali Maharaj did the right thing. What's an interesting side story that I've heard many times, but I'm not sure what the location of the story is that Bali Maharaj had a daughter, and when Vamanadev showed up, the daughter saw Vamanadev, and she was very, kind of taken with how attractive Vamanadev was. And as she saw the story unfold, where Vamanadev took everything away from her father and then humiliated her father, she changed in mood. She said, I would like to when she first saw Vamanadev, she said, I would like to have a son like this. And then later she said, I would have a son like this, and then I would kill him, And she becomes Putana in the pastimes of Krishna, that this had, so Putana was, in one sense, attracted to the Supreme Lord, but she had this grudge from the fact that Vamanadev humiliated her father.
Nice. Thank you, Maharaj. Okay, I think we have to stop. Granthara Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki, Śrīla Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Actually, Vamanadev, he's going to Shukracharya and say, so you know what kind of improper, what kind of mistakes we did during the whole ceremony. So now you tell us what we But anyway, if you are asking me, technically I can tell you some things that they think, but it's not necessary. So this shows that actually
Right, right. That, right, Shukracharya actually did know, but as far as I know, it doesn't, there's no indication that he went on and became a devotee. It sounds like he kind of continued in his path as sort of a, pious brahmana or something like that. But you can see that that's kind of, as you were saying, that was the motivation that Shukracharya had, because he knew if Bali Maharaj was removed from all austerities, then that would essentially reduce his position too, because he was dependent. So that's the kind of thing that happens quite often.